Okay. Get this set up here. Get this set up here. Hello, Kumud. Are you still with us? I'm so anxious to do this for a long time. Now back goes out. Right? Oh man. Hope I can still do this. And Bill Glazier is right with us.
Yes, am I on?
Bill, how you doing?
All right, how about you?
I'm good. So glad you found your way over here. This is my first time using StreamYard for and having other guests. Oh, it looks great. We got another guest here. That's awesome. So we got 3 people. Awesome. So welcome, Thomas and Bill. Glad you're joining us. So what I thought we would do to get started with this is I wanted, this to be operating not just to have fun, but to hook up with other people in social media to expand our audiences. I figured, the people that that follow one participant are going to want to follow the other. So I've kind of already done that. But I thought before we start, the people that are playing will say a little something about them, like if they have a YouTube channel themselves that they'd like to get the people watching to subscribe to, or other social media presence, let us know who you are, what you're doing, and where we can find you on social media. So people that like your performance or were entertained by this can follow you there. So I think Bill signed in first. So Bill, why don't you start us off?
You want a little bio? Is that it?
Yeah, just a little bit about yourself, whatever you're comfortable saying.
Well, I suppose I should confess that many, many years ago, I was an English teacher, and I was very, very poor at teaching grammar and those subjects. But I specialized in Shakespeare. And then one year, I actually got a chance to teach a senior elective, strictly Shakespeare. I never got enough postgraduate credits to maintain my certificate, so I had to leave the teaching profession. And for many years, I was a charter bus driver, but never stopped teaching Shakespeare to anybody who would listen. And recently I did start a YouTube channel just to see if anybody would watch it, and I really haven't had any traffic at all, just very little traffic. So, can I put the link in chat? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, you can do that, and or you can just message me later. And when I update this after we're not live anymore, I can update the description of the video to include the links and say, here's the people that participate.
Okay, well, we'll do it that way then. Okay.
If you don't feel comfortable, yeah. So I'll just, you can message me afterwards, and I will about what your link is, and I'll put that in the description after the video is posted. Okay.
I had a question. Is this going to be recorded?
Yeah, we're live right now on YouTube, and then so it's recording, and then it usually when the live stream is over, it takes a couple hours to to buffer and or they say it's processing, and then it becomes a video that stays on YouTube.
Okay.
So
Great.
I hope that's okay with the people that are here. Okay, so Thomas, go ahead, your turn.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we're here, fine.
Okay. I am currently a school teacher. I do middle school science. I've been doing community theater for, I guess, 7-8 years now. I really enjoy acting. And I I've been a regular at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival since I was 13. So just love all things theater. And I actually have a headshot scheduled in a couple hours here. I just moved to a city that has a pretty good TV and film presence. So I'm going to try to expand my hobby into that as well.
Focusing on this kind of stuff more and more, and building my YouTube channel as well. Be successful as a YouTuber, get people that love the theater to enjoy my channel as well. And particularly during the pandemic, when the theaters are actually closed, I thought that's all the more reason we should have ways that we can enjoy theater, from our homes. And hopefully this is one more of those. And speaking of that, just last night I was in a Zoom performance using Zoom and then streaming that of Midsummer Night's Dream. I played Aegeus and Snout. So anything else before we start? Okay, let me go ahead with the screen sharing. What I'll do is I'll put our three names on another spinner, and we'll spin to see whose turn it is first. So let's see.
Are the comments I can see here the same as the YouTube comments?
I only see the hi from Kamid Kadam. There's the live chat, and then there's a comment on the video, which are not the same thing, I believe. So anyway, let me go ahead. Let's make a new wheel with our names. Okay, so that said, maybe we could let's put this front and center right now, and we'll spin the wheel. So of course I end up going first.
The game is fixed.
Random. I'll remove myself. I'll just do you for remaining. So let's see. People mention this that we're going to do the gender neutral wheel. I'm not comfortable playing against gender, but a lot of people are, and so they ask for it. So that's the thing. I don't know if you got that. I give everyone the choice of which wheel they want to spin. I'm going to just spin the male wheel. So there we go. Okay, so Othello, farewell the tranquil mind. Interesting tidbit. I did an audiobook of Othello where I did all, so I'll get to, so let's switch to go back to my view here. And and then the recommendation so that you can find something quickly. I have the app. It's a Shakespeare app and everything, so that whatever comes up, we can find it quickly. So I'm going to find Othello here. Oh boy, I forgot to write. Let's see. I closed it out before I looked at what. Okay, here it is. Act 3, Scene 3, line 355. So I gotta find that here. So I'll go back to my view. Okay, sorry, a little. Okay, this is Othello's jealous rage. What sense had I in those stolen hours of lust? I thought it not. It harmed not me. I slept the next night well, fed well, was free and merry. I found not Cassio's kisses on her lips. He that is robbed, not wanting what is stolen, let him not know it. And he is not robbed at all. I had been happy if the general camp, pioneers and all, had tasted her sweet body, so I had nothing known. Oh, now forever. Farewell the tranquil mind. Farewell content. Farewell the plumed troops and the big wars that make ambition virtue. Oh, farewell. Farewell the neighing steed and the shrill trump, the spirit-stirring drum, the ear-piercing fife, the royal banner, and all quality, pride, pomp, and circumstance of glorious war. And oh, you mortal engines, whose rude throats the immortal Jove's dread clamors counterfeit, farewell, Othello's occupation, gone!
Very good.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, so we'll spin this Hugo's next. Go back to the spinner view. And here we will transition to, I forgot to say, now why don't we make it simple? There's only two left. Let's just flip for it. That's the simplest way. So Bill, call it in the air.
Heads.
Okay, heads it is. So you choose. Do you want to go next or Thomas?
Thomas.
Okay, Thomas. Thomas, did you wanted to stick to your to male wheel or?
Yeah, I think I could play opposite gender, but for the very first time, maybe stick something closer to my wheel.
I thought it made more sense to let everybody choose. People that want to do that, they can, but okay, so let's go back to the male wheel. There we go. So spinning for Thomas. Here we go. Macbeth, is this a dagger I see before me? I don't think that one needs any introduction. You got a very famous one. So I don't know if you're using but I think the Shakespeare app is what I recommend. Act 2, Scene 1, that should be easy to find in the text. Let me first switch the view to you. Make you front. Let's see. Since I'm the one leading, I think if I put everyone here, I'm the face that always comes up, because I think if I remove myself from the stream.
Well, nothing like starting off with something nice and simple and easy to warm up with, huh? All right. Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not, fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain? I see thee yet, in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Thou marshalest me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses, or else worth all the rest, I see thee still, and on thy blade in dungeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. Now o'er the one half world nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtain's sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murdered, alarmed by a sentinel, the wolf whose howls his watch, thus his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides towards his design moves like a ghost. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabout, and take the present horror from the time which now suits with it. Whiles I threat, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds too cold breath gives. I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. That's all I have. I'll see anyone else.
Yeah, excellent. Go back to the wheel, and Bill, you wanted to stick with male as well.
Yes, please.
Okay, so spinning for Bill. Here we go. We're starting with some of the most famous ones. So you got All the World's a Stage. It almost landed on Falstaff for you, but I don't know if you which one if you're happy about that or not. So you need a second to look it up. Act 2, Scene 7. I believe it starts around 15 lines in. So I had to look the longest because mine started 355 lines into the scene. But so
I'm gonna wing it because this is one of the few things I've memorized.
Yeah, that always happens. Where I said that it is impromptu, but every now and then you might see one. You're so well versed in it that you actually
doesn't happen too often. But
yeah, you're not expected to be off, but.
So we're ready. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. Then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th stage shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish trouble. pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Okay, awesome. I just realized, I think by taking myself out of the stream, that allowed the person who was going to go front and center, but I think I also muted myself in the process, right? You couldn't hear me clapping or anything. Did you guys hear that? Or I guess that's one thing. First time doing this, I guess I'll learn that I'll have to figure out a way to put the person going front and center, but I gotta not link myself out. But anyway, that was great, both of you. I was glad we had this competition. I'll see if it doesn't look like anyone else is joining us. And if you want to stick around, see if anybody else does join and do, or you can watch on the link that's live on YouTube. Otherwise, I had fun with this. I hope you guys did too. And you guys have any questions for me before I'll keep it going for a while to see if anybody else on a different schedule wants to join later. I'll just say be right back. Let other people join if they want to. But for now, you guys can stick around or you can go. It's up to you.
I'll probably stick around.
Sure, why not? Talk Shakespeare.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk Shakespeare. So, who wants to start? Okay, I guess I'll start off. What's your favorite film adaptation?
Oh, that's a good one. The thing that pops into my mind is Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet.
That's excellent.
There are others that I think are excellent, but that's the one that it always gets me. It really.
Uh-huh.
I always react to it very emotionally. The music has a lot to do with it, but the acting is fantastic. I think the way the actors portray these teenage lovers was right on. I mean, Romeo's breathlessness was very much like what mine was.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that's true of all movies. Sometimes, I mean, you can't blame or give credit to the author, but the soundtrack can so often make all the difference. I think there was actually a YouTube video I saw on that about they did Star Wars, and they said, imagine Star Wars without John Williams' soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
And they played it. All the scenes that are so action-packed, so how completely dead with no John Williams soundtrack going over. I'm sure the Zeffirelli version of Romeo and Juliet, the same thing is probably true. The music really makes a big difference of adding mood and so forth. I mean, for me, it's comparing apples and oranges. I like, that's definitely toward the top of my list. I also think Branagh's Henry V is another one. But even then, it's difficult because it's so 180 degrees different from Olivier's version.
Apples and oranges, yeah.
And yet, that's also excellent in its own way. Thomas, did you have a vote on your favorite?
I don't know if you've seen it, but I believe it's Joss Whedon has a version of Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I think that is just excellent.
Yeah.
Is that the modernized one that was in black and white?
At his home.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw that. I like Branagh's version, with the exception of the fact that I can't stand Michael Keaton's interpretation of Batman. He's the one thing that brings that, and that's the one thing that kills it from. It likely would be my favorite adaptation if it weren't for what Michael Keaton does to that role, which in so many ways is one of my in other productions would be my favorite part of the show. And by the way, and yeah, if you saw Dogberry's "Dost Thou Not Suspect My Place" monologue is on the wheel.
Yeah.
Sure. It just didn't happen to come up. And actually, I've used that monologue at auditions. That's another one that if it happened to come up on the spinner, I would say, okay, don't worry, I'm off book for this one.
I don't know if either of you saw it, and it's not a direct play adaptation, but on Netflix there's a movie called The King, which is loosely based on the Henriade.
What was the name? Oh, The King. Yeah.
It's not an adaptation of a play, but if you're familiar with the characters of the Henriade, it was a very interesting movie to watch with that background.
Yeah.
You know, I myself, about 6 months ago, I put this together before the pandemic, throughout any chance of getting any theater to look at anything. I was kind of self-one about taking the Henriade and combining it, the ones leading up to Henry V. I've always been fascinated by Bolingbroke, you know, the future Henry IV, you know, the Richard II one where he usurps the crown from Richard II, and then he's guilty about it the whole way through, and wants his pilgrimage to the voyage land to be his penance for overthrowing his cousin. I've always thought that's such a fascinating story, but the unfortunate thing is the fact that Bolingbroke is never if you go across the tetralogy that starts with Richard II and ends with Henry V, you know, he's probably the star of that, but he's not the star of any one play. And so I said, you know, people condense Shakespeare like crazy. So I thought, maybe I should condense the first three versions, Richard II and Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, and make a single volume that would make him, because you don't see his fascinating character arc unless you watch all three of those plays. Who's going to do that? I put that together, and I'd love to get a theater to perform that. See see Bolingbroke's rebellion, his subsequent guilt over it, and then finishing with his death. I mean, Henry IV Part 1 is one of Shakespeare's best. Part 2 is not exactly great, but it has some gems in it. The deathbed scene, you know, where Hal takes the crown. I mean, that's one of the best scenes in all of Shakespeare, and too many people don't see it these days because Part 2 of the Henry IV is not often performed anymore. But I had that idea. I put one play together. I called it Bolingbroke. I just combined Richard II plus Part 1 and 2 of Henry IV. I can send you guys a sample of that if you're interested. But that's definitely something I'd like to see adapted in the Henriade trilogy.
Well, you know, when it comes to Shakespeare, like I said, let's talk Shakespeare. It's simply a matter of getting started, and then I can't shut up about it.
Oh yeah,
there is something else. Basically, it's on my mind. I'd like to throw this out and get your reactions. I have been asked to lead a reading coming up next week on Zoom of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Uh-huh. That's cool. Go on.
Oh.
I was saying.
I have a confession to make, and that is that out of all of Shakespeare's plays, A Midsummer Night's Dream is one of my least favorites. Although I know people who say it's their favorite. I know it's very, very popular. I have seen a few live productions. I've seen several video productions. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, what's wrong with me? Why do I not respond to it the same way I do so many of the other plays? Like nothing really grabs me about it. So because I'm going to be leading this reading coming up, I started to do some review by watching some of the video versions that are available. And I went through a couple of them over the last few nights, but then it was last night that I discovered the BBC version. And that one, it came alive for me all of a sudden. It's like, and I'll tell you, one of the things that really struck me in my in my reading of the play. And
sorry to interrupt. When you say the BBC version, are you talking about that thing that the late 70s to the early 80s where they performed all of them? Or is that the BBC?
I guess it was part of that series. I think so.
Okay, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. But one of the things that I always found kind of strange in reading the play and seeing it is that Helena and Hermia. Hermia is a cute girl and short in my reading. That's the way I see her. And Helena is tall and plain. And yet most of the productions I've seen, like a couple of nights ago, I watched the one from, it must have been from the 60s, because Helen Mirren played Helena and Diana Rigg played Hermia. And these are two really beautiful women, and they're both the same height. But in the BBC production, which I watched last night, I don't know the actresses' names, but Helena was definitely taller than Hermia and plain, and Hermia was, a beautiful woman. So when they came to those dialogues between them about their differences, it came alive for me, and it was very funny. And I said, aha, then this is a good play. I like it. Okay. So what I'm wondering is, do you know what I'm talking about? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
I totally do. In fact, what you were just saying made me think of something I read about the past with the movie industry, where they kind of figured that, that to be a movie star, you have to be good looking. And that's what explains why the version where you have Diana Rigg and Helen Mirren are both beautiful, even if it's not the character. And the example I was thinking of is, where I talked about, is when Mike Nichols was getting prepared to do The Graduate. And it was just basically taken for granted back then that you had to be good looking to be a movie star, and somebody like Dustin Hoffman couldn't play the lead, even though the whole idea, the character calls for somebody who looks like a loser, looks like the guy that never gets laid, and that's why you would fall for get involved with Mrs. Robinson. But people still didn't get that. There were, in fact, because Mike Nichols, who was directing, he had previously directed on Broadway Barefoot in the Park, and his star from that show, who was also a good friend of his, Robert Redford, he really wanted to play the lead, and he just had to break it to his friend in an easy way. Say, "Look, I can't cast you in this. It's just, bottom line, you cannot play a loser." He's like, "Sure, I can play a loser, but you have to look like a guy that never gets laid."
Right. Robert Redford,
play a loser character, and it was from that book about the 1967 being the transformative year. I say, like, Graduate was one transformative film, so was Bonnie and Clyde from the same year, and they said it's interesting. They have with Bonnie and Clyde, you have Warren Beatty, who looks like a movie star and wants to be a producer. And with The Graduate, you've got Dustin Hoffman, who looks like a producer and wants to be a movie star. Yeah. So I thought so I don't know if that was the same kind of thing you were thinking about with the casting choices of Hermia and Helena, but I think maybe the new casting of the new thing you just saw might indicate, they've learned their lesson about that, just like Mike Nichols finally learned his lesson about, not all movie stars have to be good looking, especially if the part calls for them not to be. And
I think the issue with Midsummer Night's Dream is it reads as if he was writing it to be performed by high schoolers.
Yeah.
That it's a much simpler story than some of his others, and he has some simple stories. But even when I've seen it professionally done and done well, it still just makes me feel like I should be in a high school auditorium watching kids perform these roles, even the fairies. And that, combined with a certain disconnect of the storylines, I feel just kind of throws it all off. because even though they're all interconnected, you have this, the complicated love square,
Yeah.
rhombus. I think it's a love rhombus.
That's interesting to put it that way. I hear a lover's triangle. You never hear a lover's square.
Yeah.
But you may have just coined Thomas may have just coined a good expression that we know.
Yeah, I'm going to use that.
You also have the sort of political dynamics between the fairies, the king and queen, and then you have the clowns. You have Bottom and all of them who really are just kind of like totally unrelated to anything, and it all just kind of is there. And so I think there's just a certain disconnect to the storytelling of that play that can put a lot of people off.
I feel a lot better now. Thank you. I got another question. How about that changeling? What is the thing with this kid and the Indian boy?
Yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah, it's something that they introduce. Basically, I think they need to justify. It's like as a playwright, that's another thing. If you check my YouTube channel out, I put some recordings of the plays I've done. But studying playwriting, I see sometimes the idea is you need conflict and so forth, and sometimes the conflict is if you don't. Examples of the not so good writing is when you put conflict, but it's not really explained or justified well. I kind of look at that as one of the instances they just basically need Titania and Oberon to be fighting to explain what happens, and they just he just puts that thing about the Indian boy in to justify the conflict between those two. And you're right, never it's a string that never gets tied up.
Changelings were also just a common part of the mythos at the time. If instead of SIDS, you would have changelings that would steal your baby, and that would explain things of that nature. So he was writing to his audience in the 16th century, so things like that.
I've been wondering all along, ever since I became familiar with the plays, whether I'm missing something there, or maybe even everybody's missing something. That is there perhaps some hidden meaning, some symbolism, something that we don't know, or maybe a lot of people don't know, and that there's some significance to that Indian boy. It just seems so strange.
Yeah. I think that's another thing I read is that sometimes we read too much into certain things, and we have to have certain questions answered, and they really don't have to be. I think the same book that on playwriting I read that talked about that. They say everyone argues about certain things, like I think in Hamlet, the question about if you go by how old Hamlet was when he did this, that would make him this age. If you go by this other thing Shakespeare wrote, which one is it? And I think people never want to consider the answer that, well, maybe Shakespeare did. Honestly, he wasn't thinking about that. He made something that contradicted itself, and we nitpick over little things like that. Don't worry about the little details. And they say that's one reason why Shakespeare is great. A lesser writer would have stewed over it for hours, would have had writer's block. How am I going to resolve this? If I write it this way, people are going to say, this must be true. If I write it this way, there's going to be a contradiction in this other thing. And so how am I going to resolve it? And they never figure out, and so they quit writing. But a good writer realized, you know what? I can't resolve it. Who cares? It's a detail. Let's not sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, maybe Shakespeare was thinking, oh, this will really bug people.
Yeah, it was this book, the Playwrights Guidebook. Right, this is really been very useful. The guy tells an example from his own toward the end, one of his own plays that he wrote about. Okay, if I write it this way, it looks like he burned the field. He burned his paintings in this year, but in order for this plot point to work, he has to have burned them only recently, and so he realized that was, and he only got through his writer's block to complete his play when he realized, you know what, there's no way I'm going to resolve this issue. People are going to be asking questions about it. Who cares? And the fact that people are asking questions is what makes it great art. That, great art should make you ask questions.
Oh yeah.
So
Good point.
So, another thing that you bringing up, Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet made me think about what, things that would keep it from being my absolute favorite. I'm thinking of one thing one thing about that I don't like, and this is something I thought I could open the floor to a discussion on, and I was even thinking about making a YouTube video on this. So, like a lot of the film YouTubers, they have a countdown, top 10 countdown of the top 10 best action scene, top 10 best line, top 10 best. I might do something like that for Shakespeare. And I was thinking like a countdown, a list of the things that you wish had not been cut. Because in Shakespeare, if you perform it without cuts, it's going to be 4 hours. Branagh's Hamlet showed that. But so every great film version makes some cuts. But I'm always disappointed. So, okay, I know you have to make cuts, but come on, why did you have to cut that? And with Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, the thing that really stands out is the line, "Oh, brother Montague, give me your hand." This is where Montague and Capulet, they shake hands and they agree to make peace after all this. And it's a minor thing, but to me, I thought that's. In fact, I performed that twice. I played the Friar in 2 different productions, and so I just know being on stage there.
Yeah.
I just realized it has an effect. Obviously it's a tragedy. It's obviously a downer, but I mean the fact that at least it ends. Okay, the Friar got what he wanted. Peace was made in the aftermath of this in a terrible way, but it did ultimately end in what the Friar wanted, making peace between the families, and that keeps it from being a completely slit your wrist upon leaving the theater downer. And so I wish Zeffirelli hadn't cut that out. Do you guys have anything that stands out?
Yeah, I've got another complaint about Zeffirelli. I was so shocked and disappointed that he cut out the speech that Juliet does just before she takes the potion. And all she says is, Romeo, I drink this to thee, or something like that. It's a fantastic speech that she has at that point, and it was cut. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
Thomas?
You have a favorite thing that you're mad that they cut in a certain...
I don't know if this is really what you're talking about, but there's a cut that has bothered me in every single instance I've seen it. And in fact, I've never seen this cut added. And that's the prologue to Taming of the Shrew.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
People complain about how sexist the play is, but the prologue sets it up as a play within a play. And it would be so easy to have a sham audience set up in the prologue see this incredibly sexist play and not like it. And it shows, like, yes, this is sexist material, and it doesn't really play that well in modern times. And you could solve so many problems that people have. Like, he's starving her? Boo! I don't like that. And I've never once, I've seen Taming of the Shrew multiple times. I've never once seen anyone include the prologue and take care of that problem easily.
That's interesting because, I've always, Bill brought up his example of Midsummer Night's Dream being an example that most people like it, but except him. Taming of the Shrew is kind of the same with me. That's one of my very least favorite as well. And it's not just because sex, the sexism, but it bothers me particularly whether it's man oppressing women, white oppressing black, rich oppressing poor, just the idea of oppression there's nothing that pisses me off more than saying, you're going to show your obedience by saying things you know not to be true. Agreeing with me, you have to agree with me when I'm wrong. I mean, that just bugs me, the oppression. But I don't know, maybe your suggestion, maybe including that would change the way. And the other thing, it's weird. It's weird why it's popular. It's weird why women like it because it has good women characters in it. But I mean, come on, women should hate it.
Every time I've seen it, she comes out on top in the end. That he says his final lines to her like on his knees, or in some way he is subservient to her. And that's all in the direction. And I suppose you can direct it and make some sort of case for women's empowerment in that way. But if you go solely based on the text, it has a lot of issues. And I think you could solve them all just by having the audience in the prologue not like it and accept that it's kind of bad. So
that's interesting. I never thought. So yeah, that's very interesting. If I ever do make a YouTube video for that about the top scenes that get cut but which shouldn't, I had my ideas. I'll definitely take Bill's suggestion. And Thomas, I like your idea. I hadn't really thought about that. So I would definitely keep that in mind as something to put on the list, because that's a very interesting take on it, about how you could not just make it better, but specifically make it better by minimizing one of the biggest problems with presenting the play to 21st century audiences. Another one that bugged me is the with Branagh's Henry V. I told you, apples and oranges. It's up in most ways. I would say I prefer Branagh's to Olivier's, but the one thing where Olivier's comes out ahead is that I wish Branagh had not cut the leak scene, what's his name, Llewellyn, where Pistol picks a fight with him, gets his ass kicked, and says, "Eat a leek." And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's an illustration of the idea of the different cultures, the different nationalities within the UK, the Welsh versus English. Yeah, he makes fun of Llewellyn for being Welsh, and I think that's so relevant for today in American audiences about racism, the different ethnic groups that don't get along, and so forth, and how war, even an unjust war, conquering France and so forth, it brings people together who had who otherwise don't get along and so forth. Hey, you were my brother in arms in this war. And Pistol didn't learn that lesson. Hey, Llewellyn might speak with a funny accent, and Pistol and the other English people make fun of his Welsh accent, but at the end, he's just as loyal to their country as anybody else. And they illustrate that point. And so I think that's one of the big virtues of Henry V is putting that theme in, because I know it's like with Vietnam veterans. I know my dad and my father-in-law, they're so very different and so forth, yet both being Vietnam veterans, that always gave them some kind of a feeling of togetherness, something they could both talk about. So that's kind of why I see I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I see a parallel between those people and people in the time of Henry V that fought in the 100 Years' War, different cultures within the UK, and yet they're all brothers in arms when it comes to this.
How about the opposite? Is there anything that you usually see included in any adaptation that you think should more often than not be cut?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. One that actually stands out. Yeah, the very end of In Much Ado About Nothing, which is my personal favorite comedy. It's my favorite of the comedies. Is the Benedict ends after they tricked him into thinking Beatrice loves him, and he said, if I don't respond, if I do this, I can't remember, I'm this. If I don't, then I'm a Jew. I can't believe. I think that sounds pretty obvious. It's something that was perfectly acceptable back then, and it's hard to believe how anybody could not see how that would be offensive to 21st century audiences, the anti-Semitism. I can't believe that's obvious. Like I saw one production, he says, if I don't, I'll go get her picture. He just doesn't. And it's so easy to cut it without ruining anything. And yet I've seen two different productions that don't cut it. And I can't believe of all the things they cut, they don't cut something like that. Something that totally doesn't belong. Did you have anything to nominate in that category of something that usually isn't cut, but you think it should be?
I think the play inside Hamlet could often be shorter than it usually is.
Yeah.
I think by that point most people get the idea, and I've seen versions where it goes on for a very long time, and it's already a long play. It already has so much in it that you could cut that and maybe put in some more better parts. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think you probably chose a good example. What about you, Bill? Do you have anything that you think
I
about?
haven't really thought about it that much. I know that in Twelfth Night, that scene where Malvolio is supposedly in jail or prison, I think that could be cut without spoiling the play.
Probably.
You know?
I
But that's something that just came to mind. I suppose if I spend another half hour thinking about it, maybe I'd think of several other examples, but that's just something that just came to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of gets treated pretty poorly, and I'm not entirely sure he deserves all of it. So I'd have no problem seeing that cut more often than not.
Yeah.
I'm thinking also of things that usually that always get cut for a good reason. It also brings up another thing to think about: how Shakespeare's time, his traveling company, might be different from ours. There are certain scenes that are in there, and I've never seen any production except for ones that are making an issue of saying we're going to run an uncut production. That's their whole selling point. I mean, then I could understand including the "I'm a Jew" line. I could understand that one because the whole idea is you're not cutting anything. But every production cuts them as things like that are just put in, which it adds nothing. I would bet why certain things are in, like the scene in Much Ado About Nothing that starts with Benedict saying, "Boy, go fetch me that book." And he says, "Okay," and runs and gets it. And then what does that add to the story? Nothing. I mean, and I'll bet you, I know I'm just guessing, but I would give a pretty good guess that the reason that was in is because there was another actor in the company that needed lines. He was a part owner of the company as well as the writer. He needed to give lines to somebody. And there's a lot of other, or like at the end when Juliet is found dead, the musicians come on. One of the times I was rehearsing that, the director even commented, "Why the hell did what does these musicians coming into play?" I don't know. I'll bet you anything. The reason stuff like that was put in, which almost everybody has the good sense to cut, I'll bet it's because he had actors that needed lines, and we got to create, which of course is totally the opposite from right now. A playwright is not writing for a company. You absolutely have an incentive not to write extraneous characters, especially characters that are going to have one line, because you want to. It's a surefire way to not get your play produced if they're going to need a large cast. And so for Shakespeare, on the other hand, he had a large cast, his company, and they all needed lines. And that would be my guess why certain stuff is in, like the musicians in Romeo and Juliet, the boy that goes and fetches the book in Much Ado About Nothing. Any other topics we can keep this going with?
Don't get me started.
We could do another round of monologues.
What's that?
We could do another round of monologues.
Are we okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, why not? So
it's kind of there's that what would I call it when the wheel is spinning? That anticipation is kind of fun.
So what
What's it gonna be?
We used to watch this show at the Maverick Theater in Fullerton, nearby us. The improv show, and one of the improv games, they had a wheel they would spin, and I don't have the sound cue set up, but I probably should have it. So every time they spin the wheel, it goes, "You spin me right round, baby, right." I should play that next from now on, but I don't have that queued up to go. But right now, So let's see if we go back. Let's go back to the. Let me set up the wheel to spin who's going first.
I'm surprised that not more people have joined us today.
Yeah, well, it was less than. I mean, I'm hoping, you know, that this can get some views on YouTube and people can see this was really cool, and we can get more people next time. And there's other people that expressed an interest weren't available right now. And I told them there's the option of, you can set. I always live stream on Saturdays, but we can set something up special during the week that at a time slot that fits for everybody. Okay, so I've got the wheel set up for the three of us. Let's go ahead and we'll spin. Who goes first? Okay, so Thomas is going to start us off this time.
And yeah, I'll probably stick to male again.
Okay, so Thomas will perform. Iago, what's he that says I play the villain?
All right.
This one, so that's Act 2, Scene 3. You might have to look for that a little bit. It's about 244 lines in.
Yeah.
So, well, we'll give you. I got to change the screen anyway, so let's. Still put the. Okay, I'll make you. I'm trying.
I'm still looking for it.
Yeah, I can't. It looks like I can't make you center screen if I'm still. So I'm gonna have to. I'll have to remove myself from it. I'll make you center screen and just go whenever you're ready.
All right. There we go. What's he then that says I play the villain? When this advice is free, I give an honest probal to thinking, and indeed the course to win the more again. For 'tis most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the free elements. And then with her to woo the more, were to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeemed sin. His soul is so enfettered to her love that she may make, unmake, do what she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then a villain to counsel Cassio in this parallel course directly to his good? Divinity of hell! When devils will the blackest sins put on, they do suggest at first with heavenly shows, as I do now. For whiles this honest fool plies Desdemona to repair his fortunes, and she for him pleads strongly to the Moor, I'll pour this pestilence into his ear, that she repeals him for her body's lust. And by how much she strives to do him good, she shall undo her credit with the Moor. So I will turn her virtue into pitch, and out of her own goodness make the net that shall enmesh them all.
Okay, awesome. For that, let's get back to the wheel.
Mark, did you hear my question? If the wheel falls on something we've already done, do we get another spin?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll make that a rule. Is we'll not. And in fact, the wheel is set up so that once we spin, you have the choice to just close it or to remove it. I don't want to do that because then it's removed permanently. I have to put it back on. But actually, maybe I will start using that. But yeah, I'll just for now, since I didn't remove it, it might come up. But yeah, that's a good point. We shouldn't make a habit of doing the same. That's going to get boring for the viewers.
Maybe make it the actor's choice, because if it's something that another actor has done,
okay,
they have a chance to show their interpretation of it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good point. So if the actor doesn't mind doing one that somebody else has already done, then yeah, that's a good choice. But obviously, if the same person spins the same monologue, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, next, if heads Bill goes, tails I go. Tails, so I'll go next. So to the spinner. Yeah, close or remove. I'm not going to remove it, but okay, so I will do. Haha. Clear, sharper than a serpent's tooth. Good one to come up. Okay, let's see. Okay, give me a second. Act 1, scene 4. We keep getting the ones that are toward the end of a scene, which we have to look for a little bit. So give me a second. Okay, got it. Ready to go. It may be so, my lord. Here, nature. Here. Dear goddess, here. To make this creature fruitful into her wombs convey sterility. Dry up in her the organs of increase. And from her derogate body never spring a babe to honor that. To honor her. If she must teem, create her child of spleen, that it may live to be a thwart, distarn, torment to her. Let it stamp wrinkles in her brow of youth, with cadent tears fret channels in her cheeks, turn all her mother's pains and benefits to laughter and contempt, that she may feel how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Away! Away!
Very nice.
That leaves us with Bill to perform. So Bill will perform. Okay, so that we just came over like it's already come up. You have the option of doing your own interpretation of it or asking for another spin.
I think I'd rather have another one.
Okay. Here we go. Ah, what a piece of work.
2-2.
Act 2 starts around line 250.
Okay.
You make so a blank Thomas and myself, so you can be center screen.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, I gotta get.
So should I start with those words? it's part of a longer speech.
Yeah. What I marked so that people would know what I was talking about. I went by the most famous part of it so that people would recognize it. Yeah, you're right, but it does come kind of toward the. I would recommend starting toward the beginning. That's why I put the beginning of that long speech. I like the same thing. The one I just did. I put how sharper than a serpent's tooth came at the end of it, but I just put it as the title of it because that's.
Oh yeah, I understand. Okay.
So yeah, I would recommend going to the beginning of the monologue that contains that famous line in it. So that was what I meant by giving it that title.
Okay.
Okay. So
I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises. And indeed, it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why, it appears no other to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason! How infinite in faculty, in form and moving! How express and admirable! In action, how like an angel! In apprehension, how like a god! The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so.
okay, awesome. So that's another view to put it on. Maybe I should stick with that way. I'm still learning my way around StreamYard myself. I didn't realize I could put that on and we could have all been equal size. But so that's great. We went through 2 rounds of this. You got more if you want to just stick with Shakespeare chat. I'm somebody who had expressed a possible interest had just messaged and said I was at work. I'm going to text back and find out what she meant by that. If she's saying she's back now and she wants to join. So if you want to stick around, if you guys want to stick around at least long enough to see if that person is
You got my curiosity.
what's that?
You got my curiosity. What?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go. I'm at my time limit. This was fun though.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm gonna do this again next Saturday. And again, if you want to set up a one-on-one time during the week, let me know anytime.
I'm traveling next Saturday, but if you do it regularly on Saturdays, I will try to drop in when I can.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining. I hope you'll do it again sometime soon.
Yeah. Nice meeting you.
She said I was at work earlier. Let's see if Okay, so I've gone back and forth. All the stuff that I'd given you guys in emails, I'd given her in AOL Instant Messenger texts about the information, and the text that just came in while we were performing the last round was, "I was at work earlier," but she didn't explain what he meant by that. So I just texted, "Did you want to join now? I'm still live with one other participant. One just had to leave, and we were about to wrap up. But if you might want to join, I'll keep it going for a while." So you want to keep talking, or if you want to just sit still, take a break, or
So you haven't gotten a response yet, is that it?
Yeah, that's what I just sent her. I mean, I'm going to wait at least for a few minutes to see if she texts back and is interested. But
Well, I have some chores waiting for me that I don't want to do.
okay, well, that's good. So you can go, and if I'll put the "be right back." That's a feature I can do.
No, what I mean is I don't want to do them. So if you bring up another Shakespearean topic, then it'll give me an excuse not to do my chores.
Yeah. I should come. I'm glad that was a good suggestion of yours to come out of this. That there's bound to be dead time. There's bound to be some people that come in when I just start, and then people that come up that want to join, but they can't be in the stream at the beginning. So what do we do to fill the time so it's not boring? And that was a very good suggestion of yours. Just plain Shakespeare talk. We just talk off the cuff and talk.
Yeah, you just throw out anything related to Shakespeare and watch me go.
I'll give myself notes about.
Yeah, have a list of things to add. Like you started off and you said something about what's your favorite film adaptation. You have a list of all kinds of questions like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll come prepared, and I'll have them. And the other cool thing is based on what comes up in the topic. Because I'm likely to make not a live stream, but actually a prepared video. There's a countdown of the top 10 this, top 10 that, and so forth. And I can use what came up from people in our discussions to give me the ideas for that list. Here's one thing. Who you consider the best Shakespearean actor ever? I'm torn between Branna and Olivier. They're both so great in their own ways.
Interesting. I like that. See, this is what I mean. You ask a question like that, and it is a matter of being torn. Okay, especially if we consider the women too. Right?
Of course.
If you put a gun to my head,
that brings Helen Mirren in.
Yeah, exactly. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd have to say Ian McKellen.
Oh.
Yeah.
I uploaded the version of Hamlet that had it was an old one made for TV that was in the public domain, so I was able to upload it with Sean Connery before he was famous. It was actually the year before he became 007. That's on my YouTube. If you check that out, you can find that.
Did you say Hamlet?
No, Macbeth.
I've got that. Yeah, I've got it bookmarked. Yes, and I have watched it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and we got into this not live, but just in terms of the comments on my video. People got into a discussion of who was the best. Somebody said I think they thought Sean Connery was the best Macbeth, and I like the version that he did that McKellen did with Judi Dench.
Oh yeah.
If we go male, probably in terms of female, I would say Judi Dench comes out top. Yeah. But I don't really. I thought that production was, it was so plain and uninteresting. Like especially their choice to have him reacting to a ghost that isn't really there. That was a bad directorial choice. So it's not my favorite production, but I do think that was the best performance I've seen. McKellen's performance.
Speaking of that scene, the banquet scene. Patrick Stewart. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen that. I've got. I've got to check that out.
Yes, you have to. Okay, put that on your to-do list. It's definitely incredible.
And I haven't seen the one from 4 or 5 years ago either. That I should. because seriously, that's probably my favorite play. That's if I had to choose my all-time favorite of Shakespeare and the all-time favorite play, it would be Macbeth. And so I talk about it a lot. I've been chewed out backstage for saying Macbeth in the theater because I like the play. So I've earned the wrath of the other performers by failing to say the Scottish play into it backstage in a performance. So.
When I'm asked what my favorite play is, I always say Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and King Lear. And the reason why I say that is because whichever one of those I'm thinking about at the time is my favorite. Because I can't choose one over the other.
Yeah. And then comparing the tragedies to the comedies is like comparing apples to oranges. So you can't. They're so totally different. I mean, probably if I had to say, if I had to say my favorite comedy, I'd say Much Ado About Nothing.
There's so much about Shakespeare that I find phenomenal. And one of the things I find phenomenal is how unique so many of the plays are. Now, the histories can be very similar to each other, but I mean, Midsummer Night's Dream was written by the same guy that wrote Macbeth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're so unique in their own way. It's fantastic.
Although there are some things where you can see that there are certain motifs that make, even if it's a different theme, certain motifs and things that appear where you say, okay, we realize this guy has done this. The girls dressing up as guys who runs into the ground, or the Pyramus and Thisbe. Say it's the same, within Midsummer Night's Dream. It's the same kind of thing. He thinks she's dead, so he kills himself. She comes and finds out that he is dead and kills herself. So
you've seen that someplace before.
He does. I mean, which is that's the other thing that comes up. I mean, it's. I mean, hey, not everything he wrote was great. It doesn't make you not a fan to acknowledge that. That's not anything. People say you have to either love him or hate him. You can't say, he wrote some things that weren't, or there are some things you can criticize him about and still think he's the greatest writer of all time. And like, I would point out some things where he repeats the same thing. You saw this exact same thing in another play. But you know what? That becomes a positive about him in answering the idiots who like to believe in these conspiracy theories that Shakespeare didn't write nobody could be a genius to write that much. I mean, come on, look at it. You even see where he the same thing repeated, and it could even be a bad thing about him, but at least it shows that it's the same person. He likes the same plot points and he uses them over and over again. The girls dressing up as guys thing, the lover thinks that his lover is dead, so he kills himself. She comes in and kills herself. He did that twice in Midsummer Night's Dream and in Romeo and Juliet. Speaking of, with the first time that I played the friar in Romeo and Juliet, it brings up. I mean, I just thought, oh, geez, I just say a spoiler to anybody that's never seen Romeo and Juliet before. I assume, okay, I think most people know the plot that well. That what I said wasn't just a spoiler. But it's really interesting is that I usually you perform that, you assume your audience knows and that they know how it's going to end. But we were doing one benefit performance for a high school field trip that was coming in. And I'll never forget. And I'm standing in the wings because I'm just about to come in as the friar, seconds too late to prevent the tragedy, waiting to make my entrance. And just as Juliet is about to stab herself, obviously this audience was full of kids that hadn't read it yet, and they didn't know. And I'm telling you, the collective gasp as she read it was deaf. And it's like, oh my God, that's awesome. It shows how live theater is so great, how much better it is than film. The direct interaction, you can hear the audience react. Oh God, but you usually don't get that because despite what you would think, I don't think what I just said was a spoiler to too many people. I think most people know how that ends, but I could tell this is an audience of kids. They don't know how it's going to end, and the gas we got out of that, it was amazing. It was
I always love that when the audience obviously it's their first experience, and I just get this admiration for Shakespeare as a playwright. Look what he's doing to these people, like one of my favorite experiences in King Lear is the line where Gloucester says to King Lear, "Let me kiss your hand." And the very first production I ever saw, it was 1964, by the way, it was an incredible production. It was it wasn't the first live Shakespeare I saw, it was probably the second. I was brand new to Shakespeare, right? I had just finished reading the play for the first time. We get to this part, "Let me kiss your hand," and Lear says, "Let me wipe it first. It reeks of mortality." The whole, huh?
I don't remember that line.
Yeah, well, it's in there. Check it. "Let me wipe it first. It reeks of mortality." And the whole audience together went, "Ooh," like that. And to me, that was so thrilling. Look, that was incredible. What an experience that was. So the second time I saw King Lear, it was at the Stratford Theater in Stratford, Connecticut. And you remember the name Morris Karnofsky?
Name doesn't sound familiar.
Back from the 50s and 60s. I'm an old man, okay? So we get to this part, and he says, "Let me wipe it first. It reeks of mortality." And the whole audience laughed. And I thought, wow, that was interesting. Like both audiences responded quite vocally. It wasn't exactly overwhelmingly loud, but, very, very interesting, instantaneous response from the entire audience and very different from each other. So I'm always waiting for that line in a live theater. It's amazing. It's amazing. But I'm responding to what you just said about the audience response to Juliet stabbing herself.
Another area where I saw the audience, I try. It's getting audience responses to something that's funny is the other thing that's so cool. You never get that in film, but you can always enjoy it in theater when the audience responds to funny stuff. And especially with the tragedies, there's funny stuff as well. It just doesn't have a happy ending is the only difference. And so and that's the other thing that like including the two families making peace at the end, you got to make it so it's not a complete downer. You got to have fun stuff in there. And I would always try to put in a little sex as the friar to emphasize the line that ends the wedding, but by God's will, you shall not stay alone till Holy Church hath united two. And I say that you're going to keep it in your pants. And that's not what that's obviously the intention. But I try to say, I think, okay, kids. and I would get laughs out of that as we're going to say. Or the other one that, it doesn't seem that way, but I tried to read into it. Shakespeare puts stuff in that's deliberately intended to be double entendres. And maybe it is my dirty mind saying it, but the monologue, and it's all written all in rhyming couplets when he tells him I'm in love with Juliet after he thought he was in love with Rosaline. Those young men's love then lies, not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. Well, the eyes rhymes with lies, so that's why I say it. But I think it's pretty obvious he's as he says their eyes after he stopped himself from saying what body part it is that he really thinks Romeo is. Say, young men's love not in their eyes, but in their. I
came across a statement someplace. Somebody said, if you think Shakespeare, if you suspect that Shakespeare's being sexy, he is.
You know what? That's I don't know. Is this the book you're referring to?
No.
Because this, and I did a video on. Actually, I did about 3 weeks ago. I put out a video to talk about Hamilton, about how for Disney Plus to put it on there, they had to censor out the F word, and I talked about. So I used it to make a video about the different standards of what they'll allow on stage versus what they'll allow on film. And I'll say Shakespeare, you can look. There's dirty stuff in there, But I held this book up. I still have it on my desk because I held it up when I was filming that one, saying You know, there's double entendres everywhere. And the guy says, every now and then he says, thinking Shakespeare rule number one, rule number two, thinking Shakespeare rule this. If something sounds dirty, it probably is.
So that's probably where I got it. I was quoting someone else who probably got it from that book.
Yeah. Or maybe he got it from another source, because the way you said it was slightly different. Because if it sounds dirty, it probably is.
Yeah.
Like, and my example that I put in that video was from again, and I included clips from the Branagh and the Olivier version of Henry V, and where I said the tennis balls scene. I've always thought, you know, maybe it's just my imagination. He says, "Tell the Dauphin that this jest has turned his balls to gunstones." I say, is it just me who was hearing something in that his balls? Is there a double entendre there? And then when I saw the Olivier version, just a few weeks ago, I'd seen it a million times, but I saw that's the thing. Great movies of all kinds, you always pick up something that you've never seen before, even though you've seen it a million times. And what I picked up that time, I said, they changed that line. It was changed to tell the Dauphin that this has changed these balls to gunstones. They kept in balls, but they didn't say his balls. And that confirms. It confirms. Hey, if it was just me that was hearing that, the censors wouldn't have needed to make that subtle change in order to get it past the censors in 1944. Because obviously Shakespeare did intend us to hear that double entendre. It's still technically there. And that's the other thing I like. I hate when people make changes to the text, but if you're going to make changes to the text, at least make it so it scans, or say these balls, that's so minor a change, at least it scans the same. But
yeah. Getting back to Friar Lawrence for a moment, then I'm going to go.
Okay.
Somebody asked a question on Reddit several days ago. They're going to do a production of Romeo and Juliet, and they have to make cuts. And they were wondering where they could make cuts. And I did not contribute to the conversation, but something that came to my mind was, what about Friar Lawrence's first speech? Do you see that as being integral to the play?
I liked it because I like
a great speech, yes. But what I mean is it integral to the play? Not
to the plot, but to the theme, to the character. I would squawk if somebody tried to cut those lines, because it really introduces his philosophy about the plants representing the analogies for good and
his skill with them.
Yeah,
like you could come up with a potion later on.
Yeah, it foreshadows the potion. It also foreshadows basically his philosophy about the meaning of life and what this feud is doing to the community that I love. But
if you were gonna direct Romeo and Juliet and you had to cut, how would you feel about cutting that?
I would resist it for sure. Not so. Yeah, I think that was a good question, because I think you asked it because you're thinking, well, are you saying that just because you were the actor and you don't want your
No, because you were the actor, I figured you would have to.
I would still
I'm sorry, I was talking while you were talking, I'm sorry.
If I were the director, I would still want it cut. But you know what? That brings me to the one thing that I've cut both times, and I didn't squawk at all because it was just more lines to learn that were completely ridiculous, is when at the very end, the Duke bursts into the tomb, demands to know what happens, and the friar gives a 3-page long monologue, basically telling the story of the
story. Yeah, right.
We all just spent the last 2 hours watching. So I cut it completely. I said, here's what I started, and I say, all of this I can relate. And so I did the letter that didn't get delivered, all of this, and then I hand the Duke the letter saying, okay, you can read it. The whole audience just saw that.
The audience knows.
The audience doesn't need the exposition of what they just watched. Okay, we know the Duke. So I thought it made more sense to just say the first couple lines and to say all this and then after 3 pages later skip down to all this I know. I go, all this, hand him the letter, I know, and the audience is like, the Duke reads the letter. Obviously, it's going to take him longer than a few seconds to read all that, but for suspension of disbelief, we can get, okay, he looked at the letter, now he's caught up on what the audience just spent 2 hours watching.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. All right, I think I better get to work here.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I hope you'll do it again next Saturday.
Yeah, I want to. It's been fun. I hope we get to more people involved. You know.
Yeah, and I think if when I'll post the finished product, you feel free to do so as well. Like when this is complete, the link it's right now it's a live stream, but again, it takes a while for it to process. But then there'll be a video on YouTube. You know, by all means, share it. And so here's what we did last Saturday. If you think this is fun, join us next Saturday when we do it again.
Yeah, that's what I was asking to begin with, because the few friends and family that have any interest in listening to me talk about Shakespeare, they're all busy right now. So I figured, well, if I can send them a link to a recording, then.
And you know what? The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the timer about the video, because we stopped to talk about. And a lot of people might want to watch our performances, but they're going to be bored to death by listening to us talk.
Oh yeah.
Our performances are here from here to here. Then we stopped and had a long talk, and then we around. So if you're only interested in watching the performances, I'll tell them here's on your counter exactly what you'll skip to if you just want to watch the performances. So I'll do that too, in addition to putting the information about here's how you can contact people that participated.
Great.
So thanks for joining. Pass the word, pass the link to this on when it's completed video, so we can get more people involved from now on. Saturday.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was great. OSM World, looks like you're with us. I was going to wrap this up soon. I wanted to make my live stream more interesting than just opening it up and letting people communicate with one another about their channels, but I wanted to make a niche related topic that we would do for entertainment, and we did that, and I think it was awesome doing those impromptu Shakespeare monologues and the competition. You know, if you just signed in, you didn't see that. When the video is complete, go back and watch. Like what I was saying to Bill, if you're bored by listening to our discussion of Shakespeare and so forth, but you want to watch the performances and vote, you know, I'll tell you in the comments when I update that where you will see the performances going on, and you can in the comments vote on whose performance was your favorite. And but if there's anybody else that has any questions or comments, things they'd like to add, be happy to keep going for a little bit. But otherwise, I'm just going to wrap this up. I thought this was a lot of fun. I'm going to start doing this, like I said to Bill and Thomas. I want to make this what we do regularly on a Saturday. Be a much more interesting live stream to keep going all the time. So that said, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Please, USA here too. Okay. Bye, everybody. Stay tuned. Same time next week. And anytime anybody else that wants to participate in the Shakespeare Monologue Challenge and they're not available on a Saturday to participate in a group, and they want to just go one-on-one against me, let me know. We'll set up a time. So I'll explain all that in the comments. Great having you. This was a lot of fun, this live stream this Saturday. We'll do it again real soon. Bye now, everybody.